We don't want to forgive anybody. We certainly don't want to forgive murderers. And I don't say that lightly. I think it's very unnatural for us. Our desire is to see people punished for things that they do that are bad. I think it makes us feel like that's the way we can prove that all is right again. Equilibrium is restored if the people who hurt us are hurt themselves. So I think that when Jesus says, Father, forgive them, as beautiful as it is when we read it, it's really deeply hard for us to attach ourselves to that. And I think that's okay, because I think that Jesus says a lot of things, and some of them are easier for us to handle, and some of them are harder for us to handle. I mean, we love it when it's us being forgiven. The idea that Jesus would forgive the people, well, for frame of reference, when Jesus says, Father, forgive them for they don't know what they're doing, he's specifically asking God to forgive the people who are killing him while they are killing him. Not after, it's not some abstract situation. He's on the cross, he's just been crucified, and he's hanging there, and these are the first things, in the gospel according to Luke, these are the first things that he says. When we're the people, when we're the recipients of forgiveness, we know how amazing that is. And those words, I think, are some of the most calming and comforting things we can imagine. When we think of it in terms of other people who have done great damage, especially lately, we've seen so much violence. We see this man in Costa Mesa who was, I believe, killed, making his own bombs. And there was a sense of relief. Well, at least he didn't hurt anybody else. And that relief makes sense. What comes after our initial wave of sorrow and pain and sadness, in the wake of that feeling, when we watch the news in Boston, or like we did, frankly, 12 years ago, on September 11th, immediately following that wave of sorrow and pain and outrage comes a sense of, can't wait till we find those guys. When I suggest that we forgive, or it's not even my suggestion, I mean, it's when we look at Jesus and we see him forgiving these people, I don't mean to somehow lessen the horror of what happens at all. And I think what we could do is go, oh, so we're trying to dismiss. And that's not the same thing. But there's so much pain. I mean, you name these cases in Orange County, but even things like, again, this guy's in Costa Mesa making bombs and dies making his own bombs. But I mean, we have a guy that's 2 miles away from this campus, making bombs. We have another 2 miles away in the other direction near Hogue, we had that guy walk into the doctor's office and shoot the doctor dead. Last Christmas, we had the guy firing in the air at Fashion Island. How broken do you get to that point? And we're seeing it all around us. I think about often, though, I think in terms of these people who Dorner's a case where this guy didn't know how to reach out, and then when he reaches out, it's in violence. I mean, it's an explosion of anger and rage and vengeance and all these things. And we don't know. We don't know what goes on in the minds, because we don't know who they are, of the bombers in Boston. We don't know what caused this or what happened in their hearts. I mean, why the brokenness? It's not as if this brokenness is new. I mean, it's our time to recognize it. But look throughout history, and you have people lashing out at each other and hurting each other. Why? I think we structure our lives in such a way that we isolate ourselves and insulate ourselves from common living. And then we feel it. And then we want it. But we've structured our lives this way. Our society is structured this way. It's about individual success rather than shared living. And it just is. I mean, for good and bad. There's really good stuff about that too. But the reality is that we don't we don't have connections that we want. I'm not even going to say like we used to have. I wasn't around. I don't know what it used to be like. But I know that we want more than we have. And I mean, not just money-wise. I mean, I think we want deeply to know and to be known, and to love and to be loved. That's what I preach. I mean, because I think it's true. Because I think when I look at what the people were desiring in the stories and scriptures, and then I look around, I don't see much of a difference. I see people desiring to be blessed. So I think one thing we can do is stop pretending that salvation only means one thing. We need to shift. Our emphasis has been, many Christians, not all Christians at all, but many Christians in America, the emphasis has been accept Jesus Christ, and then when you die, you get to go to heaven. And so then whatever happens here, whatever, you accepted Jesus Christ, so when you die, you go to heaven. All the emphasis, and of course, if you don't, hell, and that whole thing. So this is your choice. You stand here with your choice to make, and you make the choice now, and then when this is all over, when you die, then it'll all be okay. Or it'll all be awful one way or the other, like I said, right? But where is the emphasis on salvation here and now? When Jesus looks around and talks to people, he says, the kingdom of heaven is here. For those who have eyes to see, let them see. In other words, heaven, sure, after you die, awesome. I mean, listen, the idea of the resurrection, the belief in resurrection, is a very essential part of my faith, an essential part of the Christian faith. But what about beginning to live into heaven here and creating the kingdom of heaven here? So much emphasis is placed on living a certain way so that when you die, you're okay. It doesn't really gel with our experience in life. I mean, it's not about living a certain way so that when you die, you're okay. What about living a certain way so that when you live, you're okay? And so how do we form Christian communities that are actually addressing people's needs in a loving and honest way so that they can be who and what God wants them to be? And when I say wants, I don't mean like, you'd better be this, but more like, now you're getting it. Going back to the beginning of our conversation, right? Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Jesus is loving the unlovable. That sounds really quaint when we talk, or really easy to accept when we talk about, man, he loved those people that the religious people didn't like. That's awesome. Again, and I mean it, that is great. That is in and of itself right there fantastic. But what happens when it means that he's loving the ones who are murdering him while they're murdering him? What does that mean for us? What does that teach us about forgiveness? About seeking to love everybody, everybody. Oftentimes they'll talk about the victims and they won't name the shooters. But the shooters were victims, and they are, and I'm sorry, they're not monsters, they're human beings, and they may be doing evil, and they may have given themselves over to evil, they may be instruments of evil, I'm not doubting that, but that doesn't make it any sadder, I don't think that makes them any less belonging to the God who made everything. And if we believe that, then we have to think about how we can forgive. You can go around holding resentments for people all day long, not going to affect them one bit. I mean, this person or these persons or whatever the situation is in Boston, how we feel about them may not have any effect on them whatsoever, but it has an effect on us. And I think that's important. It has an effect on us.